Today, we're going to learn everything about Achilles tendonitis. We're going to learn about what not to do and some of the things that doctors may say this is what we need to do that I wouldn't do, as well as our top three ways to get you to have some pretty fantastic and fast results. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So a little bit about me. We have helped, my office specifically has helped thousands of clients. Oh, I mean, gosh, thousands and thousands to really help them avoid medications, injections, surgery. But at the same time, they're able to get their life back. And honestly, that's kind of what we want. We want to be kind of guided through that process. And that's exactly what we do. And I always say kind of where the side of the pain is often not where the source of the problem is. For this particular issue, it is. But for a lot of things, you've got to look at the whole body in order to kind of figure out what's going on and how to get you back there. And it's very rare that we send clients to surgery. But there's been, oh my gosh, so many cases that we see where we've been able to pull them out of surgery, or when they thought they had to have surgery, they never did. So what does the Achilles tendon do? So if you think of it, the Achilles tendon, it really helps us move. So it gives us that spring reaction to propel us forward, whether we're walking, running, jumping. And the biggest analogy that I love to share with people is it's kind of like a basketball. You have that reaction of the basketball that goes down on the ground and then it bounces bounces up. And that's essentially kind of what happens with what our Achilles tendon does. It gives us that spring to allow us to move forward, spring forward, jump, all these things. Now, if we take that basketball and we now deflate it, and now we go and try to, get that same reaction, it doesn't happen. It doesn't matter how much force you put through it, you just won't get that same spring. And that's essentially kind of what happens when we get Achilles tendonitis, is that the Achilles is no longer works properly. And so you just don't get that spring and it ends up causing a lot of pain. So what is Achilles tendonitis? Well, you can have things that are more inflammatory based, where you've just kind of overused it and it's now inflamed. I mean, typically Achilles tendonitis is done from just an overuse of activities and not taking care of the body. So you can get a tendon that's very inflamed. But you also can get a tendon that basically is more of like a tendinosis, more of like a degenerative type changes that's happened, that basically is where the body has said, I'm done, no more blood supply, like it's healed as good as it's going to heal. It's almost the way, very similar to when we see people that have kind of scarred down. To take some scarring, like if my hands are scarred and I'm trying to pull them apart, the scarring won't allow me to do it. But at some point, we've got to get the scarring to get more flexible so that we can get that same kind of reaction. And that's very similar to this tendon, same kind of concepts. So what do you not want to do if you have Achilles tendonitis? So one of the biggest things is I would not get an injection. I know the tendon is swollen and irritated, but what we have found with injections, they will make your tendons much weaker. And with this particular tendon, it's a weight-bearing tendon. It's not like you have a tendonitis in your shoulder. It's not weight-bearing for those activities, but your Achilles is. And so what we have found when people have gotten injections, they could step off a curb wrong and snap their Achilles to where it's completely torn. Now you have a massive issue going on, because when you've torn an Achilles and you've got to surgically repair it, man, that's years. It takes over a year to get things back where you feel like you can get back to kind of running and jumping again, over a year when something like that's happened. So I would not recommend doing injections when you have Achilles tendonitis. The other thing is stretching. Stretching will not help. It's not, like I said, the Achilles is something that gives you that reaction. And when you're stretching it, you're not doing anything other than kind of stretching some of the muscles that are around it. And it doesn't really help. It may feel good at the time, but it's not going to help you progress at all. And we'll talk about that later. So the other thing is a lot of times doctors say, let's boot you. We're going to put you in a boot so we can allow it to heal. And so while if it's super irritated, you can do this, but you're still going to have to rehab it correctly in order to get everything feeling good again. And there is a correct way of doing it, and there is a not correct way of doing it. So what do we need to do in order for us to fix this? What does it look like? And so when we kind of have a specialized process with everything, no matter what we do, the first part of anything that we do is we're really looking at the mobility. How does the joint move? I know the Achilles is the problem, but if something is happening within the joint that's not allowing you to fully use the Achilles through its full range of motion, it can create problems. So we always check it. Ever so often, we find that people have ankle joint issues that also can cause plantar fasciitis, that can cause these kind of chronic ankle sprains that no one can kind of figure out. Their ankle feels really unsteady. Those are common things that you would see if there was a mobility issue. So we always check it just to rule it out. Same thing with the knee, same thing with like the tib fib. They all are connected. Like everything that goes up into the knee also connects into the ankle. So we just want to make sure everything is working properly there. Once we know that that's cleared and we truly like that, that's just an Achilles problem, we have to load it. And what do I mean by that? You know, our feet are on the ground and it's helping us propel us forward. So we have to, from a specificity perspective, we have to train it with our feet on the ground. And we've got to load that tissue. But here's the deal is if you don't load it enough, you aren't going to produce change. And if you load it too much, you're going to irritate it. And so there is a sweet spot in the middle where you have to load it where you can actually feel it. You can feel the tendon, but not so much that it lingers after you do your exercise for like, 15 minutes or so. If it's like kind of beyond that, then you could be loading it too much. If you're starting to notice that you feel it at night, you're overdoing it. Those are things where you're really loading it too much and it's becoming more inflamed. Other things that we like to look at is kind of like, why did this happen? That's a big piece of our training is, what happened in your training that got us to this point? And there usually is something. And so there could be, we look at the shoes, we look at your training schedule to see like, was there an increase? Did you have a period of time that you were off and then you just hit it a little bit too hard that started creating some of these issues? We've got to figure some of this stuff out because we don't want you to go back to doing that training and then having the same kind of issues again. And then really teaching you how to return to activity. So a lot of times, our goal is to get you back as quickly as possible. And sometimes it's okay, let's start training it a little bit. We're going to run and we're going to walk and just kind of test it out a little bit as we have been progressing you through some exercise that we're going to talk about here in a second. So if you look at just a tendonitis versus having surgery, because sometimes what happens is the doctors will be like, this is so bad, we might as well have surgery. Well, you know what? It's going to take you a lot longer from having a surgery of something like this than actually to find someone that knows what they're doing to help you rehab this back. So surgery can take you again over a year to get back running. Your calf never fully returns, but your strength gets back. I mean, there's times when people have torn their Achilles and they've needed to have the surgery because it's completely torn. That's a problem. Have the surgery. But when it's like a tendonitis and they just want to cut it and reattach it and get rid of the inflamed pieces of it, I would say, nope, let's rehab it. Rehab's going to do way better because if you find someone that's really good, you can rehab this in 2 to 4 months to get you back to training, depending on the severity. That depends on how long you've had it, how bad it is, those kind of things. But we're going to also show you some ways where you can really speed up the healing process pretty significantly, like a 50% speed up. It's one of our tips that we'll be sharing here in a second. So what does this look like? Loading the tendon. What are the exercises that help? And before we go into some of these pictures, I'm going to show some videos. I want to kind of share a story. So there was some research that was put out and it's basically a story. And it was two doctors in Canada. They're orthopedic surgeons. And one of them had this Achilles issue and he wanted the doctor to do surgery on him. And he goes, nope, not going to do surgery. It's not bad enough. I'm not going to do the surgery. I mean, we hear this all the time. When it gets bad enough, then come back and see us and we'll actually do something, without any tips of what they can do to kind of help them. So this doctor was pissed because he wanted to have this surgery. And he went and said, well, screw that. I'm going to start, doing heel raises. I'm going to start adding some weights to these heel raises because I'm going to tear this thing. He was on the mission to tear his Achilles so that that doctor would do surgery for him. And what he found out was that it got better and better and better. And he no longer needed to have the surgery because he was loading it with exercises. So we're going to show you the first exercise here. And essentially, you're going to start on the floor and you're going to raise up, bring the good side up, and then you lower it back down. So you raise up with both, you pick the one good side up, and then you lower it back down. So again, we've got to be able to feel it in the tendon. If you feel it, perfect. This is a great exercise for you to start with. If you don't have any pain, you don't feel it at all, and I say pain, you should have a discomfort level of about a 3 to 4 of this, and it should go away fairly quickly. But if you don't feel it, you're not progressing anything. We've got to make it harder. So you start on the floor. The next progression is you go to a step. You do the same thing. You're going to go up with both feet, take your good side off, and then lower all the way back down. And so when you lower, you're able to go a lot farther down. So we're basically really contracting those muscles and stretching it at the same time. Works fantastic for the Achilles. And so when this gets easier, then you're going to start adding weight. Put weight in a backpack so that you can be well balanced. You're going to do the same thing. And then eventually you're going to make it where it's dynamic. So that it's like, especially if you're going to get back to running and jumping, you've got to do things where it's going to make it very dynamic so that you can retrain that tendon to be able to do it. So these are the tips. Number 1 and 2 is basically, taking you through that progression of how to really load that tendon and progress the exercises to where you get to feeling great again. So tip number 3. Now this is the sweet spot. Like, this is some amazing technology that's been out. It's called regenerative type therapy. It's called shockwave. And this will speed up your healing almost by like 50%. And so what it does is it's a non-invasive regenerative treatment that uses high energy sound waves. And this stimulates the healing and it reduces the pain. And it reduces pain even in chronic conditions. Because what we find sometimes is that you'll have more like scarring, maybe some adhesions, those kind of things. It can knock those out really quickly. We also tend to go up into the calf too, to make sure there's nothing else that's going on that's also creating some of that tendonitis. That is a piece that we have to look at. We've got to go into the calf and just see kind of like where's some of the tightness happening there, that muscle is not able to respond. And so the tendon is what you're basically is taking all the load versus having some of the muscle take it as well. So we do like to go up into that calf as well to look at some other things. But if you don't do the loading part of the exercise, that tendon's not going to get better unless you're doing shockwave therapy. When you do shockwave therapy, you literally can speed the healing up by almost 50%. It's quite amazing. So it almost like re-injures that area to promote healing on like a degenerative tissue. So it'll bring a lot of blood flow to that area. It's going to remove any kind of calcifications that gets reabsorbed into the body. It's going to produce new collagen production, which is going to help strengthen those fragile tissues and speed up the healing. It also decreases inflammation by reducing the inflammatory cells. So when you have that tendon that's going to be a little bit more inflamed, it's going to knock this out pretty quickly. Again, it increases blood flow to bring all the good nutrients to the damaged area, breaks up any scar tissue or adhesion. So when we can do this in combination with the exercise, it's going to speed everything up. It's something that we have had in our office for almost a year now. And the results that we get are fantastic. So what happens if you're still hurting, you're not progressing? If you are continuing to have problems, then there's probably something that we've got to look at as a specialist. So you coming in and you're finding someone that actually understands this, like someone at our office, essentially, we will be able to help identify what you might not be doing right or wrong, or how you're loading it, or maybe you're loading it too much, or maybe you're not ready for that yet. And we've got to take some 2 steps back, or we just need to add some shockwave therapy to it so that we can help speed up the process for you. This is where, when you have someone that understands what's going on, that can specialize in this area, they're going to be able to help you understand what you're doing wrong, and guide you through the process much faster. It's just like a coach. I mean, we all need coaches for different parts of our life. We're the coach of the body. So we're going to really be able to do a full evaluation and figure out, all the pieces to what's going on, because we have to look at the whole body. We look at things, in the knee, the hip, because it all works down the chain. It's all going to make you work a little bit harder down lower if things up higher aren't working as well. But that's, again, if things aren't fully resolving, this is when you want to come in and see a specialist. So for more education, we have a ton of education. We put stuff out all the time. So we just I just had a book that was published, getting amazing results from it. Patients are literally saying they're learning so much. The stories in there, because it's based off of education through stories, patient stories, so you can really see yourself in it, has really helped them to identify like areas that they need to work on that they never thought that were even issues. So check out that's on Amazon, and it's called Regaining Hope: The Secret Guide to Hitting Pain from All Angles to Get Back to Living Life. So if you put that in Amazon, it'll be able to pull up, and you'll be able to order a book. We also have on our website, www.empower-pt.com. And we have a ton of blogs. They're updated every month. We have free reports on back pain, knee pain, hip pain, pelvic floor, TMJ. I mean, so many free reports on just education on how to help kind of guide you through the process on whatever it is that's going on with you. We have video testimonials, so you can really hear the stories of people that have tried everything, nothing has worked, but coming to our office was a complete game changer for them. We do monthly events, so you can get onto our monthly events. We also have a podcast. It's called Empower Your Life, MPOWER, Your Life. We're on Apple and SoundCloud. So those are all different resources for you to check out, just to continue your education.